Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're jumping right into a huge and honestly often misunderstood idea from the Bible, what it really means that Jesus fulfilled God's law. Okay, so right out of the gate, Jesus makes this pretty radical statement. You got to picture this. He's talking to people whose entire lives for centuries have been built around God's law. And he says, look, do not think that I have come to abolish the law. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. You know, the common idea, both back then and even today, is that Jesus just showed up to cancel all the old, stuffy rules. But he says, nope, that's not it at all. He's doing the exact opposite. So, what in the world does it mean to fulfill the law if he's not getting rid of it? That's the big question we're going to unpack. So, how does he do it? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. Jesus doesn't just stick to the law. He actually turns up the intensity. He completely raises the bar, and he does it by shifting the focus from just our outward actions to our inward motives. He goes straight for the heart. And you can see this so clearly right here. The old standard was, you shall not murder. Pretty straightforward, right? Don't kill anybody. But Jesus comes along and says, whoa, hold on. Anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Or take adultery. The rule was, don't do it. But Jesus says if you even look at someone with lust, you've already committed adultery in your heart. You see, he's going from the fruit all the way down to the root of the problem. So it becomes pretty obvious that this isn't about just managing your behavior or having a checklist of good deeds you've done. Jesus is showing us that God is after something so much deeper. He's not just after what we do, he's after what we want. He desires our hearts, our motivations, not just a bunch of well-behaved habits. And then Jesus just drops this bombshell. He says, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, you have to understand, the Pharisees were the most religious people around. They followed every tiny rule, down to the letter. And Jesus says our righteousness has to be better than theirs. I mean, that sets a standard of perfection that just feels completely impossible. And that brings us to this idea of the impossible standard. Because, well, it is. But here's the twist. The whole point of this higher, heart-level standard isn't just to crush us with more rules that we can never keep. It's actually designed to show us something vital, that we absolutely cannot meet God's perfect standard on our own. It's meant to reveal our desperate need for grace. Which, of course, leads to the only logical question you can ask at this point. If the standard is perfection of the heart, and we all know our hearts are, well, messy, then how can anyone enter the kingdom of heaven? Seriously, how is it possible? This question right here is the turning point for everything. And this is where the good news, the gospel, just crashes in. That impossible standard has an answer, and his name is Jesus. This is all about what fulfilled really means. It wasn't fulfilled by you, it was fulfilled for you. So let's define it. What does to fulfill the law actually mean? It means to perfectly keep every single part of God's law, not just in behavior, but in your heart, your thoughts, your motivations, 100% of the time. And there's only ever been one person who achieved this, Jesus. So why does this matter so much? Why is this literally the best news ever? Because it means the pressure is off. You can finally stop trying to save yourself by being good enough because you never will be. Instead, for anyone who trusts in Jesus, his perfect life, his perfect obedience is credited to your account. It's like he lived the perfect life in your place. So his grace becomes your strength, not your own effort, and his perfect obedience becomes your only real hope. Now, understanding all this isn't just some dusty theological idea. It radically changes everything about how we live. So, what does it actually look like to live in this fulfillment? How does this truth get out of our heads and into our daily lives? This is where the rubber meets the road. Okay, step one is a complete change of your goal. You get to step off that exhausting treadmill of trying to impress God with your good behavior. Your new goal isn't to rack up points. It's simply to trust in what Christ has already finished. This even changes how you read the Bible. It's no longer a rule book you use to try and earn God's love. Instead, you read it to get to know the heart of the God who already loves you completely, all because of what Jesus did. And step two flows right out of that. You can finally focus on changing your heart, not just trying to polish your actions. Because Christ fulfilled the law for you, you're now totally free to be honest about what's really going on inside. So when you mess up, you don't just confess the action, you confess the root motive, the pride, the envy, the fear. You can actually ask God's Spirit to help change your desires. And this leads to a life of real honesty and the freedom to give other people the same amazing grace that you've been given. And that really brings us to the core of it all. This isn't a command to try harder. It's an invitation to rest in what's already been done. It all comes down to this choice. Are you going to keep trying to fix yourself from the outside in, chasing a standard you can never meet? Or are you going to accept the perfect righteousness of Jesus and let His grace change you from the inside out? Really, the question is, will you allow Jesus to change your heart?